Opening day is right around the corner. We'll get into all the different roster changes that have happened in just the last 48 hours, and we'll look ahead to the prediction show we'll have tomorrow night, and then our updated power rankings on Wednesday. And finally, opening day will be here on Thursday. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe, and without further ado, let's get this rolling. Welcome into the MLB Hot Stove Daily here at the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Appreciate you guys joining us. Be sure to hit that like button on the bottom of that video. That thumbs up goes a long way to helping us out. Follow us over on X at UpsideSN and on Facebook, Upside Sports Network as well, to stay up to date with all the latest from around Major League Baseball. Now, over the weekend, we saw a couple of different changes. We saw a lot of different rosters get some finalization, a lot of clarity as far as the direction of some teams. A lot of veterans that were holding on to the last roster spot here or there around the league. Ultimately, it looked like we've seen a lot of those changes. Texas made a lot of changes with their roster over the last 48 hours or so. We'll dig into those, as well as the Boston Red Sox keeping Christian Campbell on their opening day roster. We'll talk about a lot of different starting rotations as well. But I want to welcome you guys in. It's been a pretty eventful weekend for all of us here. We were going to do our sports talk show for you guys, but unfortunately, my apologies, had some family stuff I need to take care of, but we will have that for you guys on Wednesday morning. I decided to go ahead and do that one since I'm off on Wednesday anyway. From work anyway, I'll go ahead and do our sports talk show on Wednesday. We'll talk a little bit about the NCAA tournament, a little bit about the NFL, direction of a couple of different franchises that have changed a little bit this offseason. We'll touch on the NBA and the direction of the Los Angeles Lakers now that Luka and LeBron are both there and healthy. We'll talk a little bit about the Eastern Conference as well. Can the Celtics get back to being as dominant as they were last year? And we'll touch on some NHL a little bit. We'll talk a little bit about the races for each division and the wild card. We'll talk a little bit about the interesting playoff matchups we already have set for you guys in the NHL. The 2-3 matchups in a couple of different divisions are going to be fantastic. So be sure to hit that like and subscribe and join us Wednesday morning for that episode. But really do appreciate you guys joining us. Welcome in Holly, Cowboys Nation. Doing pretty well. Everything's doing well. Doing pretty great. Family always first. We appreciate you. Absolutely. As far as what I'm looking forward to most over the next week, I'm looking forward to Major League Baseball finally getting back underway. I mean, I've had about enough spring training, talking about oblique strains and lat strains and, guys that may or may not be able to make an impact at some point this season with injury issues. I'm ready to actually get to some baseball here. I mean, I'm probably the biggest fan of the offseason of any sport ever. And even I'm ready for this thing to finally get underway. I want to see what these teams look like once they actually cross those white lines and see who ultimately has the better team. We can talk and talk and talk about how good these teams look on paper. The additions, for instance, that the Texas Rangers made to their offense. Do they have enough offensively now? Does their offense rebound to where it was in 23? Or do they look like they're going to struggle once again like they did in 24? Do the Yankees have enough firepower in their rotation to be able to hold down the fort because of the absence of Garrett Cole? It's not like they're going to be getting back either. So they're going to have to make do without him for at least a full season, probably a good portion of next season as well. I'd imagine he'd be healthy enough in the second half next year. But right now, we're probably looking at him probably around the All-Star break at the earliest for when he'll be back next offseason. Saw a couple of different headlines from the Major League Baseball Players Association that caught my eye. Andrew Miller, who does have his hand deep in the MLBPA, former pitcher in Major League Baseball, talked a lot on Foul Territory earlier about the negotiations that they're having with the league, about the issues that they see both at the top of the spending spectrum, talking about the Dodgers, the Yankees, teams that are spending a lot of money, and then also about the teams that are just not spending. And apparently there has been no willingness to budge on the topic of any type of salary floor as a way to get to a more firm cap, if you will. The league seems very interested in getting a cap at the top, of course. No surprise there. Owners don't like spending money, and who does? But at a certain point, you have to do what's best for the league. And while the owners are certainly the ones that are going to have to sign on the dotted line eventually to every contract that they make, I don't understand their hesitancy of even broaching the subject. According to Andrew Miller in his interview, basically said anytime it was brought up about a possibility of a salary floor or some type of incentive or penalty for not spending enough money to address revenue sharing, he got a flat no. We are not discussing that. So I find it interesting that Major League Baseball is very firm on that stance. And while they are insistent about solving some of the higher spending team issues, that would be one way I would try to go to the table with the Players Association and say, hey, we want these teams to not spend so much at the top, but in order to do that, we will give you a salary floor for these smaller market teams. Now, the one reason I can kind of see the owner's side of this is that you look at the Minnesota Twins. There was an article published today that said the asking price for the Pohlads for the Twins is $1.7 billion. That's a whole lot of money. Celtics, just for frame of reference anyway, in the NBA just sold for $6.1 billion. Sports franchises, more than ever, are viewed as investment vehicles. Just look at the Dallas Mavericks and the way they gutted their entire fan base by trading away Luka Doncic because the ownership group there viewed it as an investment vehicle and basically let the general manager run amok and trade away the entire future of the franchise. And it can have its negative side effects, like we just saw there in Dallas. But with the Minnesota Twins, I bring them up because the $1.7 billion asking price doesn't even mention the $495 million in debt they currently sit in. Now, sure, there are some small markets that do a really poor job spending money, making money, advertising, TV deal, all those kinds of things take a big chunk or have a big impact on that revenue stream. So Minnesota Twins to be $495 million in debt, that speaks volumes for where they are as a franchise. Speaks volumes for where they are as far as generating interest in the team. I grew up a Minnesota Twins fan first and foremost. I was born in South Dakota. You can't tell me that they don't have a huge media market. Now, does that mean they have enough eyeballs on the team? Sure. The Dallas media market, for example, for the Texas Rangers, the fourth largest media market in the entire U.S. That's a huge market. And, by the way, because it's Major League Baseball, their market goes all the way to New Mexico, into parts of Kansas, up into parts of Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, and, of course, Texas. It's a huge media market. Minnesota Twins have a very similar land area, but just like votes for the election, it's not land that votes. It's eyeballs that watch the TV screen. That's where you get your interest. That's where you get your paying customer for the Minnesota Twins. And while they're not necessarily in as big a market as the Texas Rangers, for instance, Rangers were only able to get onto the TV in front of about 16% of their fan base, in front of their media market over the last several years because of their issues with the ongoing TV deal. The Rangers were able to kind of suffer through that. Tells you with the TV issues that the Twins have had, just how much that's negatively impacted their business. So when you talk about a salary floor and a salary cap, you can kind of understand why the league is at least hesitant for some of these smaller market teams that might have or that might be in poor TV deals to be forcing them to raise their spending. But at a certain point, you need to do what's best for your organization, do what's best for the entire Major League Baseball. So if the bad TV deal is the reason why you're $495 million in debt, because you're in a smaller media market, because ticket pricing, because of the climate, because of the dome or not dome situation, whatever the reasoning is, fix it. It's not like it's an insolvable issue. The Minnesota Twins were one of the most popular teams in all of Major League Baseball in the 90s. I grew up talking about players like Chuck Knobloch, Kirby Puckett, Corey Koskie, Brad Radke, Jack Morris. Some of these Twins, Christian Guzman towards the end of the 1990s, early 2000s. There's some really great Minnesota Twins teams in there. Paul Molitor. There's a way that you can grow that market and build it up to what it once was. There are still plenty of eyeballs. It's still a plenty large media market enough to be able to invest back into your team. To where even if you do sell the team, that you should still be able to get out of your TV deal, get into a better situation. Look at what the Texas Rangers did this offseason. They completely overhauled their entire TV package. They said, the heck with it. We'll create our own. And yes, they took a big risk by doing so. But just look at the raw numbers. You're getting in front of 16 to 17% of your fan base on TV in Texas for the last couple of years now. You make it to a World Series, absolutely, it's going to draw more eyeballs, going to generate more fan interest, more attendance in the stadium. Texas now has the retractable dome, or retractable roof anyway. Minnesota doesn't have that anymore. They're no longer in the Metrodome. They're playing in Target Field, and so the weather does have a little bit more of an effect. You don't necessarily suffer the heat that you do in Texas, but you certainly suffer the cold and the weather delays. There are ways to mitigate those issues, and there have been some discussions about a stadium there in Minnesota. I don't think that happens. I don't think there's any way that happens at this point. I think they need to handle their own finances first and foremost, and that begins with the TV deal. But back to the larger point here. Even with that situation, with the TV deal, even with having those types of issues, there are ways that smaller market teams can still generate enough revenue to be able to reinvest it back into the ball club and make them a more competitive team. By the way, in case you guys forgot what we talked about last week, at the very end of the week, we talked a little bit about Mark Shapiro's interview talking about Vlad Guerrero Jr. and his philosophy that winning brings more eyeballs, brings more money, brings more revenue. That there's only been one player ever in Major League Baseball history that really draws more players because he's available and on your roster, even if you're on a losing team. He didn't necessarily view Vladimir Guerrero Jr. as that player, but said he certainly does help with winning, and winning brings more eyeballs, brings more attendance, brings more revenue. And same kind of thought process here. If you're in a smaller market situation and you're just unwilling to spend and make the product better and invest back into your ball club, guess what's going to happen with your fan base? You're not going to be interested. You don't have those off-season vibes going on like the Texas Rangers did this off-season. Hey, is there some sneaky suspicion we could be in on Corbin Burnes? No way, but really? Could we? Could we? Meanwhile, the Minnesota Twins, I hate to keep harping on them, but I feel like I have a little bit of credibility, at least, since they were my first ever favorite team. But looking at the Minnesota Twins, they had to get ownership approval to approve the signing of Ty France. They had to go to the mat to be able to bring in Harrison Bader. And understandably, now you see why. Their finances are ugly. And there are situations where other teams can generate more fan interest by being more active in free agency, gets more eyeballs, more butts in the seats. And yes, guess what? Winning works. Go out there and win. And it's not like Minnesota doesn't have a good team. They do. Are they going to be able to keep it? That's the question. And we'll have to see how this year goes. But I found it very interesting, the comments that Andrew Miller said on Foul Territory and illustrating the conversations that they've had between the MLB and the MLBPA. Really outlines how there's not just one or two issues, but a vast multitude of issues that they've made no progress on. And we're only a couple of years away until we have a work stoppage. So I don't think that it's going to be... I don't think we're going to be headed towards some kumbaya moment as a sport here. I do think we'll be headed towards some type of a work stoppage, and sadly, I think this is just more fuel for that argument there. I don't think Major League Baseball has been willing to discuss enough. I don't think Major League Baseball's Players Association have been willing to discuss enough as well. Remember last time we had a work stoppage, they were supposed to have gotten a international draft solved within the first month after they ratified the new CBA. Guess what? Still hasn't been ratified yet. That international draft. And that's just one carryover issue from the last time they had these negotiations. So we'll have to see how these things go. But as far as the sport goes, I do believe we'll be headed for a work stoppage around 2027 when the new CBA does expire. All right, welcome in Paranormal. Donnie, appreciate you joining us once again. Yankees moving for a right-handed bat. Great question there. I will say that they've been in discussions with one or two for quite a while now. The question is, do they get the big starting pitcher first and then go for another bat? But it does sound like they're going to add somebody, whether it's a small, tiny little addition, minor league guy with a that might be called up to the big league level, somebody like that. That could be a possibility. Think of what we saw with the Milwaukee Brewers trading Mark Canha to the Kansas City Royals, who drove in a run today for the Royals in a spring training game against the Texas Rangers in Arlington today. But just kind of think of that type of hitter that could come in and at least be a right-handed bat for them. I think they're looking for more of an impact hitter right now. We'll have to see if they get it. But for me, I do think they're going to try to add one lower-level piece. I think their priority right now is addressing that starting staff. As we still hear every single day, they're on the phone talking about Dylan Cease. That still has not stopped yet. Donnie, salute chat. Yes, Yankees need a righty bat for sure. True. Platoon bat till deadline happens and then go from there. That's kind of my thought process. They're going to go small with a bat for now, just kind of plug a hole, move on and just see where they're at the deadline. And then if they're still in it, say they're a couple of games out of the wild card, or say they're a game or two out of the division lead, that's when I think they're going to try to add another piece. Say if Vladdy's available, that could be one piece, but I think they'll go after an impact bat at that time. Cowboys Nation, some of these TV deals are atrocious, though. My O's got shafted with the Nats deal. True, I will say that the Nats and O's finally have at least solved their legal issues. Any and all outstanding legal issues have now been solved. We'll have to see how this thing works out for the O's and Nats, though. It's been rough. It should be a draft for all incoming players from South America or Japan, Korea leagues, in my opinion. I think that's what the Major League Baseball is going for. Just for the pure safety of the players first and foremost, but also so that they, all teams can have that equal playing field when it comes to these talented players. You're still going to have those $10,000 signings like you do now. It's going to be about scouting, development, drafting, development, more scouting and more development. Just making sure you have boots on the ground for these guys when they're 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. As they're building up to become, draft eligible, and just try to find that dime in the rough nobody else spies before you do, and maybe get them on your roster. See if you can sign them. Say that international draft turns out to be 5 rounds. That would be pretty cool. I think they could do something like a 5, maybe even an 8-round draft for the international players, and then be able to sign the $10,000 guys after that. I think that would be a way for them to go. Ramon Urias from the Orioles as a bat. Again, I think they're just going to plug a hole. I don't think they're really going to do anything that's going to be ground shaking if you're the Yankees. I will say that. Now, as far as a surprise move, kind of moving on to the Texas Rangers side of the things that I've been noticing the last couple of days, is that they surprisingly decided to put on waivers Dane Dunning and his $2.66 million salary. Shocked that they did it. Primarily because they need multi-inning relievers, guys who can be spot starters. But here's the thing. We knew going into this offseason that they weren't exactly fans of the way he threw the ball. We knew that they didn't exactly use him in their run to the World Series, even though he was their best regular season pitcher that year. He was one of their most consistent pitchers that year, and he was available. The reason why they didn't really like him is because he wasn't a big strikeout pitcher, even though he was starting to show that at the end of 23, that he could develop more of a strikeout pitch. They also didn't really like that he wasn't a flamethrower. Spin rate's not a high thing for him. And so the front office there, the manager Bruce Bochy, pitching coach Mike Maddox, while they said, hey, great on you, thanks for helping us out. But again, it's that pitchability thing. Teams don't pay for pitchability. Especially once you get to October, They want performance, high performance people. So we're talking guys like Andrew Heaney who have really high spin rates, guys who can throw over 100 miles an hour. Those are the types of players that they usually try to target, not the Dane Dunnings of the world. Now, I love Dane Dunning as a prospect. I've loved him all the way since he was a Washington Nationals prospect. Then he went over in the Adam Eaton deal, I believe, to the Chicago White Sox, Lance Lynn deal down to Texas, and he's been a pretty good professional for the Texas Rangers, getting them through the tough years at the end of their rebuild, going through their World Series in 23. Last year, not so good, but the reason why they placed him on waivers, because he just hasn't been able to throw strikes or be able to get outs this entire spring training. There was some hope that he had corrected some of those issues to be able to stay on the Major League roster, especially when you're losing 2 of your 5 starting pitchers out of your rotation to begin the year. You would think Dane Dunning would be an invaluable piece of that bullpen, that he would be guaranteed a spot, even if there was questions about the money, about his abilities, etc. Just out of pure need for that type of a player, you thought he was a surefire lock to make the opening day roster. Well, not so fast. Again, remember back to my original argument here that Brochi, that Maddox, Chris Young, all thought he was a great professional, but they were looking for something better. They were always had their eye on the door, looking for somebody who threw a little harder, who struck out a few more batters, had a higher spin rate, those types of things. They aren't really looking for Dane Dunning. He gave them innings is the one thing I think he was really good at for the Texas Rangers. And he did develop a little bit more of a strikeout pitch, but because they didn't really utilize him like they did at the end of 23 and basically said, nope, and completely demolished his confidence in the 23 postseason. Ultimately, they still won the World Series. Good on them. But they absolutely did him a little dirty. I will say that. Now, as far as the waivers go, this was kind of peculiar. I did see that he threw a sim game for the Texas Rangers. So it sounds like he could be going to the minor leagues if they can't find somebody to take that salary. Rangers, I don't think, would mind him being off of the roster, primarily because of the savings of the $2.66 million. Give them some added flexibility at the trade deadline to add whatever they need to the bullpen. But it does sound like Mark Church could make the opening day roster. Sounds like both Jack Leiter and Kumar Rocker will make the opening day roster. Another surprise from the Rangers, Adrian Hauser, who was a minor league invite to spring training. They ultimately decided not to bring him up, even though he's been pretty decent in the spring. Not necessarily lighting the world on fire, but again, multi-inning relievers, spot starters, those types of players is ultimately what it looked like they were going for. It sounds like Hauser could be on the big league roster sometime in the next couple of weeks here, so don't be too surprised if he's on the MLB rosters here shortly. But just a little bit of a surprise that they didn't allow that to happen yet. The last pitcher I will mention is Patrick Murphy for the Rangers. Never really been the greatest of starting pitchers, but he will give them invaluable innings out of the bullpen. It sounds like he will be one of the non-roster invitees that will be going on the 40-man. They'll have to figure out what other pieces they're going to offload off of this roster. It also sounds like Evan Carter could start the season at AAA, with Kevin Pillar making the team. They're going to be stretched for 40-man roster spots, though. It sounds like they're not going to put Jose Corniel on the 60-day IL right now, even though he's not going to be available. Minor league player. But they want to keep his service time down. So they're going to do a little bit of cap gymnastics and roster gymnastics just to make sure that they do not start his clock on his service time by putting him on the 60-day IL. So just an interesting time around the Rangers. A lot of changes going on. Josh Young was pulled from the game today with some neck stiffness. Sounds like he wanted to stay in the game. Bochy even said after the game he'll be back in there tomorrow. But again, when you're this close to opening day, you just want to make sure everybody gets there. And that's the priority right now. So those of you who might have saw those headlines, just go ahead and relax on those. Sounds like he's going to be just fine. All right, Paranormal, I think the pitcher trade will happen at the trade deadline. I think their biggest addition is probably going to happen at the deadline as far as a bat. I think they're absolutely desperate for some starting pitching right now. If they increase their offer, I think Dylan Cease could be in play for them. I don't think it's going to come cheap, though. The other team I'm keeping an eye on is the Miami Marlins. They are open for business, just like they were last year. Sandy Alcantara is their most valuable asset right now. I would expect them to try to rebuild his value a little bit before they actually move him. So if that is the trade deadline acquisition, that could be the big one there. I could see that one happening. But I just think the Dodgers are still a huge fit for Alcantara. I'm honestly expecting that to happen around the trade deadline, so kind of keep your eyes peeled there. But there are other pitchers that the Marlins have to offer. None at the caliber of Alcantara, You could say Yuri Perez could be there, but right now I think they're looking for more proven performance. So we're talking about Cabrera, who they've been connected with for years, talking about Weathers as well. But the Yankees are looking for somebody proven in that rotation to kind of take the role of a Garrett Cole. Big shoes to fill. They're going to use Max Fried in that role, and they're going to try to add to this rotation, just beef it up as much as they can. I saw the post about Roman. Let's see here. The Dunning thing was weird. I got a pit before they even talked to him. Yeah, I mean, as far as Dunning goes, he's a swell guy. Like I said, I've been following his career pretty much since he was back with the Washington Nationals. Just really liked his brand of baseball. He was a bit of a strikeout artist in the minor leagues. Didn't really translate to the big league level, though. That's part of the frustration I think Texas had with him, is that he didn't carry over that strikeout acumen. He was starting to get that, though, in 23, and then they just shattered what was left of his confidence, and he hasn't really been the same since. Paranormal, Dylan Cease for the Yankees at the deadline. I don't think he's going to wait that long. I think Dylan Cease gets moved early here, just like he did last year. I think we're probably talking an April or May trade here early. I don't think he makes it all the way to the trade deadline. I do not think he makes it to the All-Star break on the San Diego Padres. I think the money people are going to win out there in San Diego, and they are going to fetch top dollar for him. San Diego wants Scoball type package. He's not Tarek. I don't think they want that big of a package. Scoball's value, I think, is around $100 million, somewhere around there. But they are looking for around 50. So somebody like a Kobe Mayo, somebody like a Jackson Holiday, somebody that's a really premium asset. I don't think they're going to get it. I think they're right to ask for it. There's no real need to move him right now, aside from the finances. And so I just wait and see when that actually happens. Cowboys Nation, Jesus, Mike, you want the Dodgers to scoop up everyone? I don't want them to. I just think they are perfect, and I mean a perfect fit for a Sandy Alcantara trade. Zaire Hope, I think that player alone, along with three other guys who are in that same kind of development arc, 20 years older, under position players, high value pieces, could be really what the Miami Marlins are looking for in return for him. So I just think they have the perfect package. Say what you want about the Dodgers and the deferrals, adding everybody on the major league level. Guess what? They also draft and develop really well as well. They just have the financial might to go out there and fill any and all holes, and I mean any and all holes on their roster. Say it with me in all caps. Any and all holes on that roster with however they want to do it. Do they want to do it via trade, free agency, money, not money? They can do whatever they want, come up with any package they want for any player that they want. That's the advantage of the situation that they're in. And that's something, like I said, with the deferrals and other advantages some of these bigger market teams have, that I think will be addressed in the CBA by the Players Association. I don't think the owners are necessarily going to try to change any of those things too much, aside from the smaller market teams, and we all know how that works. Usually you're going to need more than just the small market teams to make some type of suggestion like that in order to get some real change there. Banana, welcome in. How about the Mariners bullpen situation? Who should they get with these upcoming cuts? Mariners have a really good bullpen to me. I love Munoz back there. I think they're going to get some nice pieces coming back from injury. Brash just had his first appearance since his Tommy John. And I think the Mariners are in really good shape with their pitching staff. To me, I'm not worried in any way about their pitching staff. I'm worried about their offense. They did release Mitch Haniger. That was kind of coming. We all saw that when he wasn't healthy. He hasn't even picked up a bat, I believe, since like May last year. We'll have to see how this thing works out. But Mitch Haniger, I think he'll get latch on somewhere as a kind of a bench bat. We'll have to see where he ends up. But he's a player who I still think has a little bit of good baseball left in him. How much remains to be seen. Is it just one game, a couple of weeks? Does he have one more good season in him? We will have to see. All right, let me go ahead and pull up my screen for you guys. Just kind of wanted to touch on a couple of the other changes here. We just talked about the Pohlad family seeking the $1.7 billion. And again, remember, 475, somewhere in there, $1 million in debt as well. It's incredible with that TV deal, with how much they're struggling to kind of keep things. Oh, one other thing I did want to mention that I saw yesterday anyway. Ian Anderson, former top prospect anyway, for the Atlanta Braves, that was going to get some run as a fifth starter for the Braves one more time. is going to the Los Angeles Angels. I love this deal for Los Angeles. If he gets anywhere close to being half as good a pitcher as they hoped he would be in Atlanta, he's probably their number 3 starter. He's going to be a good player for them. I'm excited to see what he can do out there in Atlanta. He's going to be reunited anyway with Ron Washington. Not that I think he's going to be some type of pitching guru and somehow unlock Ian Anderson, but I do think the Angels are the perfect landing spot. No pressure. Again, the Atlanta Braves are a team that's expected to perform and perform well, make the postseason, do well in the postseason, go far in October. Meanwhile, the Los Angeles Angels, they're just trying to scrape by with 65, 68 wins. And I think in a low-pressure environment like that, Ian Anderson kind of focus on his craft a little bit, get more comfortable at the big league level, and get to that heights of what we expected him to be at one point. We talked a little bit about Christian Campbell going on the big league roster to start the season with the Red Sox. Here's the big thing with that. He will not be sitting on the bench. That means he's probably going to be your starting second baseman more times than not. So what does that mean for Rafi Devers? What does that mean for Alex Bregman? Sounds to me like Devers is probably going to be playing a ton of DH. Bregman's going to be playing a fair amount over there at third base. And until Christian Campbell proves that he can't handle it at the major league level, I think that's just how it's going to go. I do think the Red Sox are right to do this with him. If they're not going to play him a lot, they need to keep him in the minor leagues. Get him some regular at-bats. Don't let him just sit there on the pine and say, oh, well, he's in the big league level. I'm sure he's learning a lot. No, you learn a lot by actually learning a lot, by being down in AAA, going through those trials and tribulations, adjusting your swing, working on your mechanics, working on your pitch recognition, your plate discipline. Those are all things that you can work on at the minor league level rather than sitting on the pine if you're not going to play him. So I do think he'll get a lot of playing time with the Red Sox and be given every chance to stay on the big league roster. Saw a couple other transactions anyway. One of the bigger ones, the Blue Jays decided to extend Alejandro Kirk. This one is absolutely mystifying to me, primarily because I thought Kirk was the type of player that they should have moved on from instead of Gabriel Moreno in that trade with the Arizona Diamondbacks. Well, spilled milk, water under the bridge, all that kind of thing. Now you need him on the roster, especially after you no longer have Danny Jansen. He's no longer with you. You traded him away to the Boston Red Sox. He is now on to the Tampa Bay Rays. And, Alejandro Kirk's going to have to do the heavy lifting there in Toronto for a little while here. They have a couple of prospects they'll be using in and out here. But I'm surprised that they chose to go ahead and to keep Alejandro Kirk long term because his offense declined last year. He's going to be a player that's not going to be able to be behind the plate every day. So he's going to be taking up a lot of DH at bats. When you look at Vladdy Guerrero, he's going to have to be getting some DH at bats at some point down the line. I don't think it'll be within the 5-year term of that Alejandro Kirk got. But again, just a really curious investment by the Blue Jays. The only good thing I will say about this is that I keep asking about what the long-term plan is here for the Toronto Blue Jays. Well, if you're trying to make a case to Vladimir Guerrero Jr. about the stability of your organization, one of your longtime teammates is Alejandro Kirk. Why don't we go ahead and lock him up and see if it helps convince or at least influence the decision anyway of Vladdy about staying there long term. Do I think it works? No, I don't think Alejandro Kirk is necessarily a winning player at this point. He's kind of a lumbering giant for me, and his bat's kind of taken kind of a downward spike here. I would like to see him in kind of a prove-it type of a situation here rather than a guaranteed extension. Now, the reason why that extension was so low is because the downturn offensively, because of the defensive issues as well. But you hope if he goes full-time to a DH spot, maybe the bat picks up a little bit. You get a lot more production out of it. You can go with a younger catcher behind the plate, something along those lines. That's kind of your pie-in-the-sky, best-case scenario here for this extension. I think the more likely scenario is Vladdy looks at this and goes, thanks for keeping my teammate, but the decline is real, and I'm looking for impact players. I'm not looking at Aaron Judge and then looking at Alejandro Kirk and going, I don't see the difference between the two. They're the same player. That's not what's happening in Vladdy Guerrero Jr.'s head. He's not sitting there and going, hey, I could be playing on a situation with the New York Mets, who just brought in Juan Soto. They have Francisco Lindor locked up long term. Kodai Senga, the deepest pockets in the game with Steve Cohen. I'm really ready to go here with the Mets. And then turn over to the Toronto Blue Jays and say, I've got Anthony Santander. Now I have Alejandro Kirk. Outside of that, I don't have much of the prospect system. Maybe a couple of years we could get by, but after that, we're looking completely bare in the cupboard, and then I'm going to be on a rebuilding club for the foreseeable future. So, again, the Alejandro Kirk contract to me is a little bit mystifying as far as the direction here, because again, would not have done that deal. I think the decline is real there for Alejandro Kirk. All right, appreciate you guys joining us. Welcome in, Lucas. Let's see here. Heel, welcome in. The fact that people think the Mariners are going to be better than the Astros after all the success the Astros have had are on something. I will say I think the Astros are in pretty good shape, and the reason why I say that is because of the spring of Cam Smith. I think he's been absolutely fantastic. I think Altuve is going to be a complete liability out there in left field. I think eventually they'll have to move him off of that position if he can't hack it within the first couple of months. If they have to do that, their defense gets even worse. Their offense gets a little worse as well. They need to bring in a bat at that point. They're just in an interesting situation there in Houston. As far as the Seattle Mariners, they did nothing really to address their offense. And their pitching staff, they said they're the best in the major leagues, or at least they thought anyway. I think they're still in the competition for top 2, maybe 3 rotations in the American League. But other than that, I do think they're a very good pitching staff. But the offense does lack, and I don't think they got enough to overcome the Houston Astros, even with the injuries on their pitching staff, even with the inexperience in the outfield with Jose Altuve and some young guys coming up with Cam Smith. But I think Cam Smith's going to be able to carry this thing along with a couple of the veterans there. Yordan Alvarez. Paredes is going to be a nice bet. Christian Walker, for my money, one of the best offensive and defensive first basemen in the game, if not the absolute best to do it. But we'll have to see how this thing works out. Devers has a degree from Stephon Diggs University, so he's had to act privileged and cry to play third base instead of just focus on winning. That's pretty harsh, but honestly, I think it's pretty accurate. I think that he kind of needs to put his big boy pants on and just say, hey, man, I am not a good defender. I have not been a good defender. I will work my tail off to be a better defender, and if I'm the best defender out of the two of us, so be it. Let me play third base. Otherwise, I know where my butt belongs. It belongs on the pine in between those times when I'm out there to hit. Other than that, I'm going to zip it, and I'm going to be a good teammate. That's what he really needs to be doing that's what he really needs to be doing. Heel, I got a thought next offseason. The Angels should try Vladdy Jr. and trade that Noah Shanuel guy to upgrade somewhere, probably outfield or third. I think that's a very legitimate case. Remember, they were looking to do a quote-unquote big splash this offseason. And I do think they're going to try to do it next year and short-circuit their development process. Do I think it'll work out? No, I think they'll be back right where they were 10 years ago, not making the postseason, having the same struggles, same conversations over and over again about, there's, same issues that they have again. They're going to have to come up with a better long-term plan than short-circuiting any type of organic rebuild process that they begin. Not that it matters as far as, how they add those pieces to the minor league system. It's just a matter of accruing talent and developing that talent and getting it on the field and performing at the big league level. And the teams that do that the best are usually some of the best in the game. The Angels have really struggled in that regard. All right, appreciate you guys joining us. We will have our prediction show for you guys tomorrow night. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. That thumbs up on the video goes a long way to helping us out. So if you wouldn't mind hitting that thumbs up for us real quick. Hearts in the chat are always nice as well. But be sure to hit that thumbs up and subscribe if you have not done so already. All right, we'll be live with you guys again, probably around 6 or 7 tomorrow. Thinking about doing a little bit earlier of a live. That way we can get through all of our predictions and kind of rest up the voice box for our 2 lives that we'll be doing on Wednesday. Our sports talk earlier in the day, I'll probably do that around 10 or 11. And then our weekly MLB Hot Stove Daily in the evening, or the prediction show, or the ranking show, excuse me. Lost track of my videos there, but we'll have our updated power rankings on Wednesday evening as well. All right. Y'all have a great one out there. Stay safe, everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow night.